You are listening to Share a Slice with Sean.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Share a Slice with Sean. So this time I'm happy to have on the show Irrelevant News. And she's on both YouTube and Twitter, and she makes videos about Mars Argo. And that's the group whose song Machine was covered in the theme actually, or just before the theme rather, by Exoticcandyfloss. And I'll be putting a link to Exoticcandyfloss's Instagram and also her YouTube as well. She's currently doing a fundraiser to try to raise enough funds for a new microphone, so you'll be able to hear more of her covers and maybe even some original songs at some point. She's really good. Anyway, so Mars Argo, that's sort of like a guilty pleasure of mine. I first discovered the band, probably 1 or 2 years now, and it's mostly because of the controversy involved. I actually ran into Poppy, and you'll learn about Poppy, who was made by Titanic Sinclair, and you'll learn about him as well. And through Poppy, I kept on hearing about this previous partner of Titanic's called Mars Argo, and how she just basically vanished. She just disappeared, stopped making any sort of new songs, and just went completely silent on social media. And and there was just bad, ugly blood between her and Titanic. And recently she's back again, and it's a big splash all over YouTube. And as I said, this is sort of like my version of Joe Rogan's MMA. I truly doubt that most people are going to really understand what this is about. And because I've already released all the episodes for this month, I'm going to be releasing this episode on YouTube first. Which makes sense too, because this is really a YouTube battle. Poppy is on YouTube. Mars Argo had a heavy influence on YouTube. They're both being billed as YouTube stars who are, there's a law case involved, a lawsuit rather. It's just fascinating. I mean, all you need to do is Google Mars Argo Poppy, and you are about to fall into a rabbit hole. So that's why I think it could be intriguing for people who are even not really aware of Mars Argo, and Poppy and Titanic Sinclair and the whole lot. It is almost Shakespearean, the level of drama involved in this. So that's where I get off on that. I really find it fascinating. And I'm going to be talking, as I said before, with irrelevant news about this. And I hope you learned something about Titanic Sinclair and about Mars Argo, and about this whole thing going on about the lawsuit. Believe me, just do a Google search. You're going to be you're going to be basically falling into the rabbit hole of intrigue for hours and hours. So without further ado, let's talk with irrelevant news from Seattle. I just want to let you guys, like the listeners, know that people think I'm kind of crazy, but listening, like just keeping so much into this Mars Argo stuff, I think that it's kind of my equivalent to Joe Rogan's MMA, I'm really into it. So this will be one of those episodes where, some of the listeners will know what we're talking about and a lot might not. But I think that even the people who haven't heard of this story may find it interesting because it's just so goddamn compelling.
Yeah. There's most of the people I feel like who are into this story aren't the people who have been following since the beginning. These are people who found out about some bit of the story and needed to know more.
Yeah, I definitely think so. Let's jump right into it, okay? So you have this couple, and they come from Saginaw, Michigan originally, and one is called Corey Mixter and the other one is Brittany Sheets. And they meet on the internet, and rumor has it they were an item. They were a big time item, and they were together all the time. And they started making videos on YouTube, and their show was called Computer Show, right? That was their original show.
Yeah, it's the Computer Show.
Yeah, exactly. And if I'm not too afraid of them coming after me for rights, maybe I'll play like the intro or something. Welcome to our Computer Show. And it was just really weird stuff, like on a white background. They were doing just there were some like ASMR type things going on where you can hear like more audio than you would normally, and it was just kind of creepy but goofy. Like I would say more like Dada-esque kind of art. Like it was very interesting. But in these videos, they were playing music to begin with, and what happened was these videos started getting taken down, even though they were like getting really popular. They were taken down because of copyright, because they were using other people's music. So then they started making music together for the show. That's what I heard, at least.
Yeah, that was the whole story. They came out with their Technology is a Dead Bird album, which had a lot of, I don't know if we should get into that yet, but Charlotte-esque music, if you will.
Right. That's a recurring character, Charlotte. And yeah, maybe. I think so. And Charlotte, she's like this mannequin. We can get into that a bit later. She figures more on Corey Mixter's later work. So just for everybody, because I'm not sure if I filled everybody in, but Brittany Sheets, her stage name is Mars Argo, and Corey Mixter, his stage name is Titanic Sinclair. So, and so when we refer to them moving forward, we might kind of interchange these, but mostly we're going to be calling them Mars. Mars is the woman, and Corey is Titanic. That's the guy. And and they had this, and Corey went on later on to make these shows with another person, Mariah, and she is Poppy. She's called Poppy, and there's a lot to digest. So I maybe we can go back into like sort of the chronological story. I mean, what happened next?
Yeah, we'll just put some breadcrumbs together for you in the beginning.
Exactly. I mean, they're making their videos, and then they go to Chicago. So they're like, I don't know if they went to art school together or not. That I don't know. But they go to Chicago to continue with their video and their music production, and it's there that they make their first. Their first big album, right? Which is the Dead Bird one, right? Memory serves?
Yeah. That would be their first album. Very mixed reviews on it, and Yeah, I think even among fans, there's a lot of mixed reviews. I think it's cool and interesting. Some people think it's annoying and pretentious, but that's how people feel about a lot of this.
Yeah, well, they even make fun of the pretension too in some of these the old computer show videos. I mean, there's the one about art school where it's a fun making fun of these things, but I mean, they're in Chicago. They, hang out there with this sort of photographer friend of theirs called Katai. I mean, that's his, no one has real names anymore. That's his online persona name. And you can find video online of them all hanging out together, going to their apartment and stuff. And they've got a pretty nice pad. they've got money coming from somewhere. I'm not quite sure where. And then they're making their videos, and then their Mars Argo's father, I guess, invests in their endeavor, and he loans them money for over 80% ownership in it, sort of an LLC, limited liability corporation or something like that, or company. And
it's Mars Argo LLC, and it's registered in Michigan and California. So he was serious about making sure this was done legally. He wasn't just giving them money. He wanted a stake in this legally.
And that comes back later on. That's a real consideration now. So, I mean, we don't know what the agreement actually was for this LLC, and I'm not really even sure if I'm sure it's possible to look up parts of that, right? Because it needs to be registered, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, I would imagine. And also in the lawsuit, it does mention that he would get a share of sales for music, merchandise sales, stuff like that. So it was pretty specific in the lawsuit what a lot of that would entail.
Yeah, and actually we're jumping ahead a little bit because that's another breadcrumb. Yeah, basically what happens is they're in Chicago, and then they go hardcore, and they move to LA, and they're going for broke at this point. They're going to make it. And while they're in LA, the popularity of Mars Argo, the band, who's the same name as Mars Argo, the person, which is kind of interesting, right? And same name as Mars Argo, the company. They get bigger, and their website called Grocery Bag TV, that blows up. More people get to listen to it. They're making themes all of a sudden for other podcasts, for TV shows, even. Like, things are going pretty well. And then it's like the relationship starts getting very toxic, and there are problems with the relationship that kind of like exacerbate the situation to the point where they have like this spectacular breakup situation that occurs.
Yeah. Yep. Basically, what the situation was for the fans was they just kind of stopped doing stuff together. Mars just disappeared. And that was just kind of the narrative for a while. She disappeared. Where'd she go? And Titanic would say things negatively about her on the internet. Sometimes she would say, oh, she just didn't want to do it anymore. And other times she would say, like, she's just a spoiled rich girl and success was too hard for her. But there wasn't really much from her about why she left and why it stopped.
Yeah, actually, Titanic went to the point even more than that. He released a single called Trust Fund, which just like rips Mars to pieces, basically, talking about how, it must be so nice, right, to have a dad who pays for everything, right?
Yeah.
And that I get that's a running theme, like, just a kind of a full disclosure for people listening. I'm pretty much with Mars Argo on a lot of this, most of it actually. So that's like a running theme as we move forward, because after the ugly breakup, we get sort of a repeating pattern. Immediately after the breakup, Titanic starts working with this she was more like sort of an indie / country kind of artist from Nashville called Mariah Pereira. And and they made this project called, well, it was called That Poppy, and then it was just called Poppy. And it was almost like on a Friday, Mars Argo stopped, and on the Monday, Poppy started. Like, that's the way it felt like to fans. Like, that you had the same white backdrop, you had a lot of the same themes, except maybe a little more creepy Illuminati imagery or something going on. But I mean, a little more, Poppy seems a little more ominous at times. But in general, it looks, the two aesthetically look a lot alike. It's as if, it really is as if, Titanic Sinclair just said, okay, see you later, Brittany. Right, I'm just going to keep doing this now, and I'm just going to continue the project without you. But he did more than just that. If you look back at it, you're going to start seeing repeating themes where he's doing the same things with That Poppy as were done with Mars Argo in the computer show.
Yeah, and if you were to look for, like, if you were to go to YouTube and search for Mars Argo Poppy, like in the same search bar, you would find tons and tons of YouTube videos of people just making so many connections between Titanic's work and Mars Argo. And so this isn't just, it's not just a couple of people who think this. A lot of people think this, and turns out Mars also thinks this. Right.
That brings us to Mars coming back. So Mars Argo, on her Tumblr, she writes PTSD for why, she took down the videos. Basically, all the videos except maybe 2 of them were taken down off of Grocery Bag TV, and one of the ones that was left was Runaway. The Runaway video, where it talks about her basically leaving LA, right? And just getting away, right? Which is interesting. That's kind of interesting, because that's sort of what Mars said she had to do. She's saying in a lawsuit that she's lodged against Titanic Sinclair, after basically she was had complete silence online, more or less, until now. And then she comes back. In the lawsuit, she says that she actually had to leave LA because she feared the psychological and physical harassment of Titanic.
Yeah. And the lawsuit isn't just her saying these things. There are a lot of pictures and text messages, and it's just really scary what she alleges happened. And I think that, combined with the things she's saying that Titanic and Poppy are doing together, it's a level of harassment that I've personally never heard of in my life.
Yeah, I mean the actual, just a few examples of how this is a little strange. You had Mars. She just after leaving LA, or it could have been still during LA, I'm not really sure with the timing, but she actually went herself to Japan to do some voiceover work for Sunny Bright, which is this Japanese clothing line, fashion line. And she also there were some pictures, and she modeled.
Yeah. So the situation with that actually is she became friends with Yoppie, who is the owner of Little Sunny Bite, around February of 2015. And Yoppie actually visited Mars in California in April of 2015. So they were developing a close friendship. She just didn't just work with her, they had a friendship. And then Mars did go to Japan later in that same year.
It's kind of weird that you have Yoppy and then Poppy. I don't know. That's kind of strange.
Yeah, the weirdest thing is that they both had those names before they were connected to these people.
Okay. You start seeing
some of the coincidences are, some of the actual coincidences are even more strange than the real connections.
So, I mean, so these two, they got together and they did some work together. And then the weird thing is that this work seemed to stop. And then on their one of their most recent releases, like promos, all of a sudden it was Titanic Sinclair's new project, Poppy, doing the music, which is kind of weird, you know? Yeah,
especially because, for one, the style that Yoppy uses in her voiceovers is almost like a play on like bad dubbing, you know? So you could really use any song over a lot of these things. But also, the line previous to the line that Poppy promoted literally had Mars's face on it. Like, a bunch of t-shirts with Mars's face on it.
Yeah, and I mean, for me, Mars Argo, her voice is very childlike. It just seems more appropriate. And the fact that they had this like relationship, it's just kind of interesting that all of a sudden you have Poppy coming in like this later on. And it's sort of almost like a pattern, because you also had, I mean, there was an art school, I think. No, it was some kind of school.
It was a Japanese language school.
Yeah.
Yeah, Mars was going to the Japanese language school, and Poppy ended up attending that school with Debbie Ryan, Matt Bennett, and Titanic Sinclair. Really weird.
I mean, is this the only language school? It just kind of like, I mean, if you can say, okay, these are coincidences. I mean, and then, but
like
then,
I looked and there were 3 other language schools in a 12-mile radius of that school. So Japanese language schools in particular. So definitely not the only one.
And it's strange, because you would think that, you know, if you had an ugly breakup with someone, you would go out of your way not to go to the same. If you found out that you were in the same school, you'd go out of your way not to be in the same school. And I know people might say, you know, oh, maybe they didn't know, but it seems like they know what she's doing. I mean, it seems almost creepy how much they know what Mars, like as if they have friends who are talking to friends who know what Mars is doing, kind of situation.
Well, yeah, and there have been some very recent leaks of text messages that tell us that there was a teenage girl that Titanic was talking to, where he would give her unreleased or rare songs from Mars Argo, and she would like send him pictures and stuff that she had come up with of like Mars, and he would ask like, where's that from? And this is like last year.
Wow. I mean,
yeah, it's crazy and scary. It scares me, honestly, to think someone's acting like that to another person.
And I mean, I've heard other podcasts where they're saying, well, why is Mars so bitter? Why is she pushing this lawsuit? And by the way, the lawsuit is talking about basically not only physical and mental abuse, but also about essentially her brand being usurped, like taken away, right? And
yeah. Common law right of publicity, the most basic way to describe it is you have the right as a business entity to not be confused with another person. And so there's a bit in the lawsuit where she talks about trying to meet a manager or an agent, and the agent showed her Poppy's lowlife video thinking it was her. So that's, a lot of the things that seem irrelevant in the lawsuit, you have to connect back to what she's actually alleging in the filing.
Right. And the damage my understanding is she's seeking damages and also seeking sort of a restraining order from Corey Mixter from Titanic, if memory serves.
Yeah, the restraining order was mentioned in the lawsuit, but the restraining order was filed completely separately. So the mention of it in the lawsuit was just to tell the judge, I'm seriously scared of this person and I am filing a restraining order at the same time as I'm filing this motion.
And I mean, the thing is that as I was kind of in the middle of saying I got sidetracked, was that, I mean, people were saying, well, why doesn't she just get over it? Okay, first of all, which is a terrible thing to say to someone who may have experienced, physical abuse and mental harassment, what have you. But at the same time, you've got this dude who is, going and releasing singles. Like, for instance, rumor had it at one point that Mars Argo was working on her new project. She was trying to get her life together, right? So she's going to make her new project, get over her PTSD, all that kind of stuff, and she was calling it Guppy. And then I see that I go to look up Guppy, and I say, oh, this is earlier on when I didn't know much about Titanic or anything like that. I say, oh, that's not Mars Argo. That's a song by Titanic Sinclair, right?
Yeah.
And it's just like, what the fuck, why? Like, that demonstrates to me a level of obsessive compulsion that is like a little scary.
Yeah, and I feel like you would have to be fairly unfamiliar with Titanic Sinclair to not initially call him the bitter one. I mean, the way he behaves on social media is just as a bitter person, not towards Mars in general, but he's a bitter person. He's a bitter human being. So to immediately assume Mars is being bitter in filing this lawsuit seems a little weird, or just maybe unaware.
Yeah, and actually that's another thing with Titanic. So he actually deleted zillions of tweets, both from Poppy's account and from his own account. You can find
that actually was clarified by Social Blade. Titanic actually didn't delete any tweets. It just looked like it because he retweeted Poppy so much that all of Poppy's deleted tweets looked like his. Yeah, I was making fun of him for thinking he was lying about that. But looking at the tweets he left up, I was like, why would he go and delete a bunch of tweets and leave up all this mean ass crap that could help the lawsuit,
So, and I mean, he, if you go back and look at some of his Reddit posts, you can see that he's very, very technically minded. Like, I think he's a brilliant, a fantastic sound producer, but wow, like some of the stuff that he says is pretty bitter. You're absolutely right. And some of the tweets that he mentioned Mars Argo in, where he said that I created Mars Argo, she would have been nothing without me. I played all the instruments. She did nothing, yada, yada.
More bizarre claims. It's like as if we haven't seen her play instruments. It's just so weird that he makes these claims that so many times you can just refute with video evidence.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, he could, and also, according to the lawsuit, at least, so, I mean, they have this ugly breakup, right? She takes down all the videos, most of the videos, and we just learned this. I mean, I'm even not really sure when I learned this, but anyway, she takes down all these videos, and then basically, he kind of like, when he found out that she no longer wanted to work with him professionally, like he basically flipped out, and according to the lawsuit, he would break into her apartment, like force her window. He would send her like text messages with with pictures of his Doc Marten boots or whatever on her front porch and say, I'm here. I mean, that's kind of like psycho, like the kind of thing that a psycho stalker ex-boyfriend would do. It's pretty brutal.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know. That kind of behavior like is really scary, and it's really hard for me to understand people who don't see how scary that can be. Like, it's, I don't know. Those pictures tell a story and a half on their own. And then the actual lawsuit and the descriptions behind those pictures, it's just a really scary picture of a human being who is dangerous.
And why? Okay, so why did they have the breakup? One of the reasons, apparently, that they had the breakup was that Mars had actually found out that Titanic was a philanderer. He was cheating, and so she confronted him with that, and it just didn't go well at all. And there were some leaked DMs where it went into some pretty horrible graphic detail, where she was talking about like what he did with some girl, I'm not sure exactly who, and he said, "Oh no, I was drunk, it wasn't my fault. I'll get better, I'll do better, yada yada." But it just kept going. So at that point, Mars Argo said, "Okay, we got to break up, but we can keep doing the professional thing." But then when the abuse continued, she decided to cut that off as well. And I think that maybe a lot of the frustration that Titanic was having was that when she deleted those videos and she like cut off the professional ties, that's also cutting off whatever money they had, because she had, I don't know, she had some percentage of that LLC, control over that, and her dad had the vast majority, right? So yeah, they each had about 7%, Titanic and Mars, and then her dad had about 80%. Right. So that means that, when it comes to who owns the material and who who like could direct the direction of that company, basically, it seems to me like Titanic at that point was kind of like bye-bye, Yeah. He's made statements before in the past saying that like he would sue her for all the money she's made on AdSense and Bandcamp and all that stuff, but he's too busy. And so he's made a lot of allusions to being wronged in that sense of he has a portion of that money that's entitled to him. And I don't think he's necessarily wrong, but it didn't stop there. And so basically, what Titanic, since leaving Mars Argo, or since Mars Argo left him, I guess, Titanic has really done well with Poppy. Sundance Film Festival, Poppy. Just imagine how Mars must have felt seeing pictures of Poppy's face on Times Square, right? Right, yeah. That would drive me crazy, I think, if I were her, that situation. Yeah. I've had such a hard time even imagining how I would feel, because this is just so out there. Like, I really can't even imagine how I would feel if I were her. Yeah, exactly. And just also now, even now, there's like, so we've got the court case, right? And so the court case, first of all, we'll back up a little more, because there's even more to this, because sometime around, I think it was 2015 or something, Titanic Sinclair and Poppy, they put in requests for like quote restraining orders, unquote, against this other character called Josh Moran. Yep. Yeah, that definitely happened there. Basically, the situation, as far as we can tell through our own eyes, is this Josh guy beat up Titanic Sinclair. Like, that's what we know for sure, what we can see. That happened. And that happened because this guy. Well, actually, let me rephrase that. Not because that's a big can word, but we know that happened because there was some security camera footage at Sinclair's condo or something, which shows this guy who looks very much like Josh Moran get out of a white van, go up, have a conversation with Titanic and get visibly agitated about something. And then he just basically punched Titanic Sinclair in the face by the looks of it and knocked him right off his chair there in the back. And I mean, that's horrible. I feel bad for Titanic. No one should be punched, right?
Yeah.
But
agreed.
It would be interesting to know why that happened. And it's not just random. I mean, it seems like this Josh guy had a previous relationship with Titanic Sinclair's partner, Poppy, and also with currently with Mars Argo.
Yeah, that's where things got really, really weird when Poppy released her response to the lawsuit, where she said, actually, no, I didn't do any of those things. She did those things. And she basically accused Mars of working with her abuser and trying to taunt and intimidate her, which is a weird claim for somebody who's been like completely underground and not public for years, but we don't need to go into all that. But yeah, Poppy's statement was basically like, no, you did that and I'm the victim. And then she posted the request for restraining orders for her and Titanic.
Yeah. Whew. And those restraining orders, they got basically thrown. Okay. Well, so the one that Titanic put in, which one probably is the strongest one, right? Is the strongest one evidence-wise, I guess, because there's video.
Yeah, well, that actually depends. So he did have the video, but if a judge says, okay, this is the way you two people communicate with each other, you're just as bad as he is, they're probably not going to grant the restraining order. So his was denied for whatever reason, even though they do have that video evidence. Poppy then dropped her restraining order. But getting a domestic violence restraining order is different from getting a civil harassment restraining order. If she could have proved that she didn't speak to him that way, but her boyfriend did, the judge is still going to be able to say, like, okay, then he needs to stay away from you. I can't grant this for your boyfriend, but he needs to stay away from you. So basically, TLDR, Titanic's was denied outright by a judge, and Poppy dropped hers, likely because she was afraid that she wouldn't get it granted after his was denied, is what I imagine.
And I'm not sure if we laid this out clearly or not, but Poppy said in her statement that she used to go out with this Josh guy, and he was abusive to her. So it's like Mars Argo says, look, I've been dead to the world now for 2 years. I've, was abused by this dude. I'm having my brand like robbed away from me. Whenever I try to make a new project, he comes along and preempts it on me, right? And
yes.
So she puts that out there, and then Poppy says, oh, this is shocking that you would say such a thing, given the fact that you're currently collaborating with this songwriter guy, Josh, who used to abuse me. And look here, we made these requests for, restraining order type documents here, but they were denied, of course, right? Or denied or dropped, right?
Yes.
So that's kind of the background. It was an kind of like a really weird twist.
Yeah, that was a strange morning in my life. I woke up to that statement, and then the way she released things was really odd for somebody who had about 2-3 weeks to prepare. She released this statement at like 3 a.m. Pacific time, and then about 3 hours later posts the restraining order requests. And then 2 or 3 hours after that, she posts this video. And so it was almost like she was trying to make this into another like story for her character or something. She wasn't trying to get out all the information so that everybody knew what happened. She was dragging it out and trying to make it really suspenseful. And I don't know. I'm not saying I think she's lying, because I'm pretty against that, but I do think that the way that she went about this entire thing was really bizarre and didn't seem to take things very seriously.
And I'm going to be putting links to the original lawsuit by Mars Argo, and also to Mars Argo's she wrote sort of like a Me Too type letter, and she posted that on her Twitter and all over the place, where she kind of broke her social media silence. And then I'm also going to post the response by links to the response by Poppy. And I don't even know if Titanic actually responded himself or not. Did he?
No, he hasn't made any sort of statement or response, which is another element of this that has kind of upset a lot of people. He told Philip DeFranco's show that a statement was coming, implying that he was going to make a statement. But the only statement that's been made has been from what we're supposed to think is Poppy. And it's just really awful to have somebody who claims that they're an abuse victim be made to defend someone who is accused of being an abuser. Like, that's just such a bad dynamic. It's awful. I don't like it.
Yeah, it's a really weird scene, because you think that so that Poppy, she is listed on the lawsuit, so she is one of the defendants here, right?
Yes.
The accused, I guess, would be the better word. But so is Titanic, and by far more so in a certain way. And yet, because Poppy, she would have had knowledge. That's what Mars is basically saying, is that she was complicit. Yeah. But Titanic's the dude who apparently went and punched Mars Argo in the mouth, right?
Yes.
You think that he would be the one where we're like, okay, when's he going to say something?
Yeah, and you'll notice that Josh Moran defended himself pretty quickly, and Mars has not lifted a finger to defend him publicly, because that's not her job, and it's just inappropriate. And I think Mars is mature enough to know that. And I think Josh feels he's innocent enough that he can defend himself without any repercussions. And I don't think Titanic feels that way.
It's almost as if, because any issues like that, what is the lawsuit about? The lawsuit is about Mars Argo versus Titanic Sinclair and Poppy. It's not about this Josh Moran guy at all.
Right. Nick Rakita, he's a lawyer who talks on YouTube. He does think that they might be trying to use this to add Josh to the lawsuit, but that seems like a strange move when most of the lawsuit is copyright stuff.
Yeah, a fair bit of it is copyright stuff, and that's where, it's hard. It's tricky. I guess it's not technically copyright. It's more like brand, assuming, as you say, identity, right?
Yeah.
So you have and that's another thing. If you have situations where Titanic released the song Guppy, he released the song Trust Fund. He this video that was released, it was kind of leaked that this photographer guy Katai did at some point with them in the past, where Mars Argo, she had this bubble gum, and there was a gun. It was a really creepy video, and she's talking about how she tried to have it all, and blood came out of her mouth, and it was weird, and that was exactly 3 minutes and 36 seconds long.
Yes,
I think it was that. Within Poppy started going off about 336 all the time, and they were capitalizing on the fact that all these, because Mars Argo was so traumatized or PTSD, whatever, she wasn't talking anything. All these fans were trying to figure out, they were doing those esoteric ways of trying to figure out what was going on, and they were analyzing numbers and things, and And here comes, this 336. There's several Poppy videos with 336 in it, for instance.
Yeah.
This was a whole thing.
And they've encouraged the ARG concept multiple times. So it's not like people trying to make connections with numbers or just crazy people with nothing better to do. Like, they've encouraged the idea of this being an ARG and of there being codes in things. It's happened before legitimately for things that they've intended, like their computer boy stuff. They intended for that to be an ARG code situation.
Yeah, right. And even in the notes, in the video notes, or you had these interesting things buried in websites. You had all this weird kind of Illuminati type imagery going on. Like, Titanic was big in this. You also had, so during Mars Argo's time, you had, not only did you have that video of her, the creepy video, which I'll put a link to, of her coughing up blood, but you also had pictures of Mars Argo with blood coming from her mouth as well. There's another still picture of that. But then you had Poppy with blood coming from her mouth in the same way. And you had, and within the video Runaway, for instance, you had blood coming out of Titanic's mouth. I mean, I'm not trying, I might be casting a wide net here, but what I'm saying is that there's these, it's like constant imagery where it's like, it's almost like tit for tat. It's like he's just poking that, and there's also a leopard print jacket.
Yeah, and it's not just wearing a leopard print jacket. A lot of people keep saying people don't own wearing leopard print jackets. Like, no, she owned that jacket.
Yeah, she owned that particular jacket, which I mean, can you imagine you have a breakup with someone and then your ex-boyfriend is sending you pictures of his current girlfriend wearing your jacket? That's kind of weird. Imagine if he then shows it to the world, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of strange, but I mean, not also, if you look at, there's some old Vines that I looked at where it had them before they broke up. And I think it was during the taping of this music video, I think it was Mrs. Statler or something like that, where you had this old lady, and in the Vine, she was wearing Mars Argo's jacket, and she was saying, "Hello, I'm Mars Argo," right?
Yeah.
And that, I mean, I know it's kind of meta, but what I'm saying is that they thought even back then, like, how are you going to personify Mars Argo? How are you going to make fun of her? Oh, I'm just going to put on her jacket and pretend to be her. It's not just random. Like that jacket was significant enough to represent Mars Argo, that this lady could put it on and say, "Hi, I'm Mars Argo."
Yeah,
right?
Definitely. I think that's a really good example of like the connections that you have to make based on the context. You can't just make connections and say, this number is the same. You have to say, well, this number is the same. And also this is what was going on when this number was relevant, you know?
Yeah, and during that video, it was basically Mars saying that, I just wanted to have it all, right? And this fits into Titanic's narrative that Mars Argo, she just, she wanted to make it in with fame. She wanted, some people in Hollywood make it, some people don't,
which is funny.
Which is also
thinking in that video, huh?
Yeah, I'm thinking of one of the more recent videos where that was the same thing. Poppy was saying, some people make it, some people don't. And then she says at the end, "I like being famous," or something like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Poppy's whole thing is almost speaking in a childlike way, in the way that children speak, in the way they form their sentences. But the things she's saying and the juxtaposition of the music is supposed to make you feel very unsettled.
Right. And I mean, I wonder how much of that is aimed towards Mars fans as well. I mean, even if you piss them off, you're still getting them to watch your video.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I think that Titanic has spent most of his adult life thinking that the way he was going to get ahead in the world was by pissing off people. His Reddit presence seems to indicate as much.
And so most recently, there were some DMs that were leaked.
Yes.
Where between Titanic Sinclair and this sort of young, adoring fan. It's kind of creepy. It's like Papa Titanic or something.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. And like, I guess she's an adult now, but looking back at like her earlier videos when she started her YouTube channel, like she was young. She looked young. She acted young. She was a young girl. And she got pretty big on YouTube and in the fandom by finding unreleased or very rare videos of the computer show or of Mars Argo performances. And it kind of sort of officially came out like last week, these leaked texts or these leaked messages between her and Titanic, that he was sending this young girl unreleased messages and stuff like that. And one of the things I remember, unreleased content. And one of the things I remember her sending him was, do you remember that video of Mars that was on her IMBD page where she's just playing the guitar and says, "Hi, I'm Brittany. It's really nice to meet you." She like sings it, you know? Have you seen that?
No, I haven't seen that.
It was on her IMBD page. She's, trying to get ahead and do her life or whatever. And this girl sends Titanic that video. And first of all, he asks where it's from because he's got to keep tabs on her. And the next thing he says is, "Looks like she learned C major." Like,
that's really condescending.
And it's just, this girl, she spent a lot of time doing Titanic Sinclair, Mars Argo covers. She's really talented. And she seems to respect him, or at least used to. And the combination of all that has made me feel really uncomfortable. He's what, 30 something? Like, that's not okay. It doesn't matter if it's romantic or not, you know?
It is kind of weird. He seems to have a rapport with this, and I heard on a different. It's interesting. I don't want to make any weird implications here. I don't want to sound like I'm making any kind of accusations or anything like that, because I'm sure he hasn't done anything wrong. But it seems to me like with Mars, when he got together with Mars Argo, she was young, she was kind of childlike, and then you've got Poppy. She's very young, she's very childlike, and then you've got this other DM person there, and she's sort of the same way. And it's like, and there, if you take a look at some of the interactions, like a lot of these. Mostly girls seem to be completely obsessed with him. Like just like enamored to the point of it almost being cult-like. It is kind of strange.
He definitely has, I can't completely say like, oh, he has young fans, like, whatever. People are going to be attracted to you and your art. But where it gets to be an issue is when you are sharing intimate details about your past relationship with your ex with young teenage girls. I don't really necessarily want to say that like his pattern indicates an attraction to young girls, because I really don't think that's necessarily it. I think his pattern indicates he has a attraction to talented young women who are influenceable enough to turn into a project that he can then profit off of. I think that's been his main pattern. He did that with Mars, he did that with Poppy, and this other girl, I think she might not feel as much respect for him nowadays, but she was indicating a high level of respect for him and for his music. And he indicated to her, with giving her these very rare, unreleased things, that he trusted her. And that is it's an intense dynamic for a young girl and a grown man who she idolizes, you know?
Yeah, completely. And well, I mean, I guess there's one more person that I think I'll talk about, and that's for the longest time it seemed like Mars Argo was following on Instagram, at least, a friend of hers called Ivan Lung, who's goes by the name of Asian Ivan. And he released a statement too, where he basically was talking about how, look, this is Mars Argo. Like, I know Mars Argo. She dresses like this. She acts like this. This is Mars Argo. So when Brittany Sheets says that, you know, this guy is basically like causing brand confusion because he is copying me all the time. This Ivan guy, this Asian Ivan, he is saying it's true. Like, this is the way she is. This is the way she dresses. This is the way she behaves. This is the way she sounds. This is the way she speaks.
Yeah, and Max Landis also made a statement very similar to that in, I think, like mid 2016. So people who know her say this is who she is. You know, Mars Argo was a sort of character, but it was based on who she is as a person.
Yeah, it was like how what would you do to sort of play up a character? Like, you want to, like, you know, it's like, and that goes back to my idea about, you know, the coat, and it also goes back to the idea that the makeup was the same between both of them. The hair, you know, they both dyed their hair blonde. Neither are a natural blonde, as far as I know,
don't think so.
Right? And the same kind of voice, the same like kind of dressing. It all like plays in. So no single thing. Like, if you look at one single thing, you're like, oh, how can you copyright fairy wings? You can't. I mean, everybody wears them, right? But no, you have to take the entire package,
right? And it's kind of like,
and you realize one is clearly
like,
the other.
You can't copyright white letters on a red background. But if you're a soda company and you use a specific kind of cursive, yeah, you can't do that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, exactly. So, where do we go from here? Like, what's next in the case? What's next in our unhealthy obsession with this as we watch this whole drama play out? And by the way, I'm sure we missed a ton of crap on the sides, but like, what do you think could be next? Like, we're waiting for the 30 days or the 21 days or something to wear out.
Oh no, that 21 days was up on Tuesday, and they still haven't responded. Okay,
so what does that mean? Okay, you
Titanic,
mean by that
Poppy.
You mean
in court.
Titanic
they have
Sinclair.
To respond in court in some way or another in 21 days, but it's entirely possible that they have been avoiding getting served in the first place. So if they haven't been served yet, the 21 days hasn't started.
So basically, if you go to his door and you knock on the door, he might be hiding behind the couch because he's like, oh God, I don't.
But also,
I mean,
you know,
that will happen though. He will get served. A policeman will do it if
he
necessary.
spoke to Philip DeFranco about the case, and Poppy has spoken publicly about the case. So at the end of the day, Mars can go to the courts and say, look, they know about this. They know this is going on. They just don't care. And the case could then move forward.
So, I mean, if they don't... So what do you know a little bit more about the timing? I mean, if they don't actually respond to the case, then, I mean, Mars is going to basically win, and then we don't quite know what that means either, necessarily.
She hasn't requested a dollar amount.
But
if she had requested a specific dollar amount, we would be able to more know what would happen. But she didn't request a specific dollar amount, and she requested a jury trial. So I think it would be... I can't even imagine how a judge would quantify what she's owed if they haven't sat down with Titanic and Poppy and their management. And I don't even know. It's going to be very strange. It's all going to be strange. No matter if they don't respond, it'll still be really weird to figure out how much she could potentially be owed.
Yeah, because I mean, we don't even know how much. I'm willing to bet that Mars Argo didn't make a ton of money.
Yeah,
if anything, right?
Yeah, on Reddit,
this is
Titanic
just my
said
feeling,
a lot of
right?
things.
But Poppy
merch
maybe
makes a lot more for Mars Argo. Merch always made the most.
I've never been able to buy anything. It's all sold. I mean, but I mean, the thing is that, yeah, exactly. Whereas with Poppy, they could be pulling in. I mean, he has to be getting money from somewhere, right? So, I mean, the thing is that it's pretty obvious to me that they're at least breaking even with Poppy.
Yeah,
if not
and
doing much
they
better.
are able to film at Google Studios. So a lot of the production costs and stuff aren't actually on them. I believe the stylist that they use works for publicity. So they don't have as much overhead. Like Mars Argo as a project may have had more overhead than Poppy based on the support that they have.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that. Well, listen, Sharon, thanks so much for being on the show. I think we're kind of out of time here. It was a whole hour flew by.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Well, that's about it for this episode. I'd really like to thank Irrelevant News for being on the program today, and I'm going to be providing links, rather, to her stuff in the show notes. I'd like to thank the Fantastic Plastics for letting me use their music on the intro and the outro. And I'd like to encourage you to go to shareaslicepodcast.com or Slices Podcast over at Twitter to learn about previous episodes. Go there, subscribe to the podcast, especially if you are listening on YouTube. The majority of my stuff is actually on Apple Podcasts and just, in the podcast sphere. And I'm going to be leading off this episode actually with another cover of Machine, and it's by Heather DeSanctis and Michael Carasoli. Really cool from the channel My Show Bro. I'll be putting links to the channel and also to these artists in the show notes as well. So until next time, thanks so much for listening. And subscribe and follow me.
Why can't I see you?
You took me to a place that wasn't safe for me and you.
We saw the Milky Way at night. You put up a fight with me. Now we're leaving. What happened to the Monday nights? We would fall asleep at 3. I think that we could be the same. I think I'm insane. My brain is telling me I'm a machine.
My friend's got a 40 with his 50 on. Said the world's gonna end, but I think he's wrong. You know it's true, the things I do for you and me. Now we're leaving. Machine.